Hello, welcome to Disruptive Fridays. I hope we're live. I hope you can hear me. Today we got a critical gaming edition. We're calling it Play or Get Played. We're going to talk about utopias, playable utopias, and critical political satires, examinations of corporate power, and hopefully we can figure out ways to play and game different systems instead of the systems playing us. And I'd like to welcome our guests. With us, we have Marloes de Valk, Chloê Langford, and Gabriel Helfenstein. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey.
With proper delay. Marloes is a software artist based in the Netherlands. She works a lot on the topics of global warming and surveillance and corporate lobbyism. She also presented at our conference Hate News. You can check out her talk there. She's also a fellow at the V2 Lab for Unstable Media. Chloe and Gabriel are both based in Berlin. They're part of the AAA software collective that works on experimental games and strange software art. So, Hi guys, how are you all doing?
Good.
Very good.
Good, thank you.
Nice. This was coming for a long time, and summer came in between. We had this planned. We have viewers with us on disruptionlab.org/Fridays. We have the chat window. You can ask questions to the speakers at any point, and we'll try to catch them here. I'd like to start with a couple of clips of games that our speakers have worked on. So let's see if we can queue up a couple of trailers.
I had this recurring dream that this cave made from Jonas by Helfenstein. And my partner lives there but doesn't feel to. There's nothing about her. I cry when I sleep, road to sleep. There's nothing to get or to fix me. It's weird what states of blank being. There's no heaven, just in case you wondered. Heaven is the place where things remain the same forever.
There we go. Yeah, what you saw there was the trailer for first for Utopias, Navigating Without Coordinates by AAA software, and then What Remains, that Marloes was involved with. So, yes, I'll start with giving the word to Marloes. You can tell us a bit about your work.
Yes, thank you, Jonas. So I will describe my two latest projects to give a bit of an idea before we start the discussion. So first about What Remains, where you saw the little clip from. This developed with John Lee, Arnaud Guillon, Dustin Long, and Émeric Mansou. It's an 8-bit NES game for the 1985 Nintendo console. And the whole story is set in 1986. It's released on the original hardware as well as a downloadable ROM. And you can play it in emulator if you want, but you can also play it on the original hardware. It's an adventure game in which you have to save the town where you live, Sunny Peaks, and eventually the whole world from a life-extinguishing disaster. The game uses several disinformation campaigns, industry disinformation campaigns from the 80s. It's based on real events. And you will have to combat these campaigns by joining forces with others and learning new skills such as lockpicking and, most importantly, whistleblowing and broadcasting and distributing the things you learn. It is quite dystopic in the sense that the game shows a lot of what is wrong with the world or what was wrong in the 80s and that we are still dealing with today, such as in the 80s we figured out climate change was happening already earlier, but then it was really confirmed, and acid rain, the hole in the ozone layer. But it's also not so dystopic because it also shows ways to fight back. Yes, I think that this is where the utopic angle is maybe touching the developers. All of us, we try to feed in ways of dealing with it that still has a sort of seed of hope. And it's trying to understand why nothing has been happening for 30 years. And in that way, it really embodies the Chinese proverb that I really love. The best time to plant a tree is 30 years ago, and the second best time is now. And this makes tangible both the missed opportunity, but also the actual impact that simple actions that you do today can have in 30 years' time. The other project that I would like to tell you about is Villains and Heroes, which is a very different game. It's an interactive fiction online. You accidentally receive an invitation to a themed costume party of the billionaire Robert Mercer. And this costume party is a real event. It took place shortly after the election of Trump in 2016 in December. Robert Mercer, for those who don't know him, is the hedge fund billionaire who bankrolled the Trump campaign in 2016. And he's owner of 8 Bermuda companies shown in the Paradise Papers. He's the owner of intellectual property of Aggregate IQ, which was used by the Vote Leave campaign in the Brexit referendum. He's founder and investor in Cambridge Analytica, used by Leave.eu and the Trump campaign. He is also investor in far-right news outlet Breitbart News, and a competitive poker player, member of the National Rifle Association, and owner of the gun wielded by Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator. What a guy.
Wow.
And so I will wrap up with that. Yeah, I wanted to treat this news item that was really like 1 in a million over the time of the Brexit referendum and the Trump election. There was so much news, but I tried to really treat it as a super important historical event and really nitpick every guest at the party and really research them thoroughly. Strip away all the hysteria of the party and show a network of power in a text-based game. And it features a lot of key players in an opaquely funded libertarian think tank network promoting Islamophobia, climate change denialism, environmental deregulation, gun rights, etc. And it's online, free to play, and I invite you to check it out. And then I will pass the mic to Chloe and Gabriel to talk about their projects.
Thank you, Marloes. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. It's always the nervous thing with live streams that it doesn't work. Okay, so I'm Chloe, and you can see Gabriel probably in a moment. So we're both from AAA Collective. There's 10 of us in the collective, so today just 2 of us are here. we're from all over the world, although we're based in Berlin. So some of our members are from Argentina, Australia, France, Germany, the United States, Russia. And yeah, most of us live here in Berlin, except for one of our members who lives in Moscow. And so we met each other through a community event that two of the members of the collective were running called Art Games, which now the whole collective runs together. And we make games together, we have a blog, and I guess we came together through a common desire to make games in a different format. So I guess what I mean by that is, first of all, that we wanted to make games outside of the indie game industry, outside of the fine art industry, to use processes that are different to how people make things in those worlds. And also, hopefully, that the outcome and what we make is different because of the way we're making it, that we have more freedom to make things that couldn't be made in those spaces. So Gabriel, did you want to tell us about the game, Utopias?
Yes, sure. Thanks, Chloe. So the game, the trailer you saw is from a game called Utopias, Navigating Without Coordinates. So originally the idea behind the game was that we noticed that in modern culture and in the fictional cultural world is kind of dominated by dystopias. Like most of the things that you see are dystopic in nature, which dystopias are fine. They're a good way to criticize what's happening sometimes, but at the same time, if everyone is proposing dystopias and no one is coming up with utopias, meaning solutions, then we are not going to advance as a culture and as a society. So we try to come up with the opposite of what a lot of other game developers are doing, meaning we try to come up with utopian solutions. The game in itself is made out of 9 different worlds or 9 different games that each one of us had made. So you basically have like a hub world, like a center planet, basically, when you can travel to different games. And so in the end, it's not like we imagined 9 different utopian worlds. It's some of them are utopian worlds, others are like our reflection on what it means to build an utopia. Some of us documented their failure to come up with an utopia. Others made more poetic things, trying to reflect on utopia. So it's very different approaches, but all centered on this idea of what is an utopia and what can we propose in the future. And I would say that even the game is called Utopias. The main utopian aspect of our work is actually our collaboration, which maybe Chloe can say something to.
Chloe, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to wait until I'm visible on the screen to speak. So, yeah, we work collaboratively, as Gabriel was saying. So something that we really discovered through the process of making this game is that I guess we have a shared idea of utopia as not an imaginary place that exists, but also a process or many processes that will help us get to a better world that we want to live in. And so I guess the way we work together is we try to work non-hierarchically, and we try to pool our skills and resources, and we try to respect individual and collective vision, and as well as that, also respect and keep equal technical, creative, and logistical labor. So none of those kinds of labor are more important than the other in the process of making the game. So I guess something that we really tried to challenge ourselves to do in the making of this game was to have a utopian process of working that was not harmful to all of us working together, and that really gave all of us a voice in making this game, which was really hard to do sometimes. We didn't always live up to that, but I think that's part of the challenge of challenging oneself to think in a utopian way. It's not always easy. So, Jonas, I guess I'll give it back to you now.
Thanks. No, this really inspiring projects, and I want to start with Marloes. Like, where do you find your inspiration like through, or how did you decide to go into to games? And I'm wondering if there are like other projects like these that have inspired you, or I'm not sure how big the like a critical indie game scene. Yeah, how much is there?
Yeah, there are quite some critical games, indie games, and and some of them are amazing and they're very inspiring. Some of them are really old, like I really like old text-based games that had almost no potential of fancy graphics or amazing sound or anything, just really terminal-based text. But they managed to conjure up really amazing stories that entered differently. Like that, I dealt with them differently than if I just read a story or a description that I could not interact with. And one example is, for instance, the game Bureaucracy. It's from the 80s, 87, where you have to you change address and you register on a terminal your new data, but something goes wrong, and then you are no longer have access to your bank account. You no longer get your mail. It's like a bureaucratic hellhole of a process, and your sort of point level, your levels are measured in blood pressure. So you get the higher and higher blood pressure. In the end, I don't want to spoil it, but it ends really badly. It's brilliant, and it's just just terminal and text. And other things that really inspire me is actually literature and speculative fiction and sci-fi and whatnot. Anything that triggers ideas about how things could be different, or point to how weird today is, how weird our world is. I really like that. So yeah.
Chloe and Gabriel, there are other things that you drew from in gaming, and how. Where do you see yourself as AAA in the indie gaming scene?
It's difficult to answer. I mean, from the inspiration point, I would say that we are 9 different people, so there's very different inspirations. Some of us directly from games, some of us not at all. And how do we see each other in the gaming scene? I would say maybe what Chloe said at the beginning, that we see each other kind of between the gaming and the art scene, and we don't really have a particular foot in both. I don't know, Chloe, what you would say.
I think actually I'm not super inspired by games usually. There's a few games out there that I like, but I'm probably actually inspired more by very old traditional media like.
Oh, I can't hear Chloe anymore. No, you're back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you said you were inspired by older media.
Yeah, I'm probably more inspired by reading books, which is maybe. But I think this is a good thing if people are bringing in different inspirations to the game world and are not just inspired by games, because I think the traditional mainstream game world is becoming very kind of like a machine that's eating and producing the same material. So, yeah.
Our technician asked Marloes if you can angle your screen downwards because you're disappearing. Let's see. Yeah, that's better. Good. Now we can see you better. Cool. Now, I was also wondering, like the decision to work within games, like for these kinds of topics. I mean, partly, of course, we work with the tools we have or the tools that we know, and we explore them. But then the question is like, who do we reach with it, and like what's the feedback? Because I really love these games of Marloes, since they're dealing with really tricky topics. Like we also work with really heavy topics, and it's great to make them playful, and it's very inspiring. Like on one hand, it's just very inspiring to see a playful way to deal with both, utopias and dystopias, or like literacy in surveillance or whatever. So this inspiration is really important to have there when you're working on these topics. But then there's the question of like, can we reach like casual gamers, or are we only going to reach certain levels of geeks with this? Anyone want to give a stab of what or just tell me like your like the response that you have gotten otherwise from people who have played the games?
Yeah, well, I think with What Remains, we really try to not focus on the art world or on basically the scene that we are already part of, which basically happened with a previous project, Naked on Pluto, where we made a Facebook game on privacy and surveillance, also text-based. But it was, it didn't really spread wide enough, and it was also too complicated. I think. An interface. So we thought, okay, this time we target a different audience, and we are really we love Nintendo games from the 80s, and a lot of people do, and it's a really mixed group. It's both a generation that grew up with these games, but it's also younger people, and they're not from one political background or anything. So and it worked really well, because in the end we wanted to make it a both enjoyable game as well as a political satire with quite heavy content, and it really came across and it triggered really interesting discussions, such as on Reddit there was a whole thread of people discussing whether it was a good or bad that we use recycled cartridges. Like, we chose to do that because we think it's an environmental game, and it's really important that we don't produce more e-waste. We want to reuse old hardware, and it was a very conscious choice then to sacrifice old NES games that are no longer popular and they're just collecting dust, and then make something new out of it. And but there are collectors that think that every Nintendo game is sacred. It should not be touched. So it was quite a feisty discussion between people who really got our point and really thought it was amazing that we did this, and others that were like, but they're butchering these games. It's like unacceptable. So, and it's really nice because that is not happening in a gallery somewhere, but it's just it's a totally different audience and much wider than usual. It really made us very happy.
And like Chloe and Gabriel, like, did you get any also like provocations of what utopians people would like to play? Or like how they I don't know.
Actually, I would like to answer the last question first, which was about like which I guess like how to reach out to an audience that's not just like nerds who are already playing games. This is something that we're also quite interested in because it is hard to get people to sit down at their computer and play a game. Like, most people don't actually want to do that. So a few things that we've tried to do are make a game that can be played at home, but also present this game in different formats. So when we launched Utopias, we had an event, which was basically just a party, but at the party we played the whole game through live for people, so that they didn't have to come into a gallery space and like try to play a game in public, because it's usually really uncomfortable and really embarrassing for most people, unless you're a really good gamer. And actually this was really successful. Like, people really enjoyed sitting back and watching the whole game be played through almost as though it's a film or something. And then we also had the game set up in the space so people could play, but we tried to make it quite cozy and change the lighting, really not make it a gallery space or somewhere where it's intimidating to be, and that you feel that you're being watched while you play. We're always trying to think about also how to make games approachable for other people, also like making the controls simple, giving a lot of instruction on how to use the controls. These things are important as well.
That's great. I mean, I would love this. That's basically, I try to replay like the old NES and Super NES games of my childhood, and I don't I don't have the attention span or the patience to do it anymore, or a bunch of really interesting games. So I've also become one of these just falling asleep to even listening to Let's Plays or things like that. So I think. If we can get more of this, not great CO2 footprint on all of this streaming, of course, but I like the idea of hanging out also in physical space, watching other people play, because that's what I enjoyed as well as a kid. I just my friends were always better than me at playing, and I loved watching them play the game, and so sitting there and watching people play these weird and critical games, think would be a wonderful way of dealing with tricky topics in a very relaxed and also passive way. I feel we need to have more ways of engaging with politics in a very chill way, especially now after all of these lockdown times where our minds are already fried. But for the what did you otherwise creating utopias? Did you have any insights, or what struck you trying to both come up with what your utopia would be, which is very tricky in itself, and then I can just imagine also when you try to realize your utopia, even if it's just a game, that it's even if you define your utopia as something very simple, there will always be bugs and metaphorical bugs in your utopia. So I wonder what struck you through your process.
So I would say that everyone approached it very differently. I can answer, for example, for myself. What I did was that I started with a really utopian world with a story. That depicted a kind of science fiction-y utopian universe. And then during making this game, I realized that my idea was just not working, not as a game and also not as an utopian world. So I kind of documented my failure to come up with an utopia and made kind of a meta thing about the process of making the game, and then asked other people in the collective what their utopian vision would be, so that the whole thing is more like a documentation on the process of searching for utopias more than an utopia in itself. And then other people had very different approaches to them.
Yeah, which one was yours, Chloe?
Have you played the whole game? I don't know. It's the one with the hands, where you're touching things.
Okay. No. I think it looks wonderful.
It's a bit hard to describe. I also made something that I think is a bit more about the process of trying to find utopia, or maybe more about the the mindset and the attitude that one could have while trying to, I guess, look for a utopian world. I mean, I definitely was really inspired by, for example, Ursula Le Guin's book, The Dispossessed, because it's such a... I think the full title of the book is The Dispossessed, an Ambiguous Utopia. And what I really like about that book is I think it really shows the human problems with these different political systems, and it really portrays the person-to-person issues in those worlds. But at the same time, I think I would be... I don't really like playing games that are like a whole world. So I guess I made something that's very different to what I was inspired by.
Yeah, no, I was also thinking about also reading The Dispossessed and other books in my last summer holidays, and I think that one and others of her books and short stories, they redefine or define utopias for me in an interesting way that is basically switching out your set of problems for a different set of problems. it's like you don't solve everything, but you imagine a radically different world where everything is upside down or switched around. And basically, I mean, I think also the Dispossessed, if I remember it right, it's also about not fitting into the utopia. That like you won't find a utopia that works for everyone. So I think I think it's helpful, and I think we're still really bad at that, or in culture in general, to propose utopias. It's like it's in a way it's a worthless concept because we think of it just as everything is fine, like it's like heaven, where everything is solved and nothing happens, and so there's nothing we can do with that. And if we are proposing a system with its new set of problems, then maybe no one is interested. Like you're supposed to solve everything or nothing. But I think like having a playable version of that is, or maybe like a utopia configurator where you just maybe that's already a version of SimCity or Sims or whatever. Yeah. Any questions you have to each other?
Yeah, I'm really curious how you managed to collaborate in a utopic way when it's like when you're working on different continents and with so many people. That's pretty impressive. How did this process go?
It was super hard. So, I mean, most of us are actually here in Berlin. There's just one person in Russia. So at least most of the time we can nearly completely be one group in one room. But that of course doesn't solve all our problems. It makes it really, I think 10 people is a lot of people. And we have the classic problem, like in many kind of, I guess, like non-hierarchical environments, is a classic problem is how do you make sure that either that some people are doing a lot more work than others, or that some people unwillingly become bottlenecks. So because other people are waiting for them to do something, then other people get frustrated with them. And so I guess the biggest problem that we encountered during making this game was that we didn't manage to structure the work in a way that allowed everyone to contribute as much or as little as they wanted. So I guess that was what didn't work. But I think a lot of stuff did work very well. We try and put a lot of focus on, I guess, like each other as people. Which doesn't mean that we see it just as a social group or something like this, but it's important to us that the people in the group come before what it is that we're making. So our well-being comes before what we make. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Gabriel?
Yes, I mean, the same. I would say the same. It's a very difficult process, and based on a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions, and obviously also a lot of compromise that everyone has to make. And some things did work out, some things not as well. But in general, like Chloe said, we try to put our well-being at the center of it and not become, basically what we wanted to avoid is become a classical video game studio. So having like, one person doing this, one person doing that, having to kill ourselves crunching the whole time. So sometimes there were sadly moments where it came to that, and we will try to not do that next time, but we try to limit this and have like a process that respects everyone in every way.
So do you want to keep making this kind of collaboration where everyone is working on their own thing and that is funneled together at the end, or something where you all have to be actually working on the same thing?
No, I think that was one of the biggest problems we had with this project, is that this concept of having one utopia per person made it pretty difficult also technically to combine everything. And definitely next project we want to do something that is more integrated and also gives more room for different people to interact more if they want or less if they want, because if everyone has to make again, we have all the stress. And if you do work on one bigger project, some people can do more. Some people can choose to opt out for a while if they have other things. So it's easier to work with different lives, basically.
I mean, I would love to, like, if you keep trying to like aspire to your like a utopian way of working, and like documenting along the way, like these are what we're able to do, or what works, or the compromises we have to make. Like I think we should do this more. Like, you know, we set our goals as utopian ways of working, and then we try to describe, like, okay, this is what it looks like so far. I mean, I've been part of also some different companies that are also like aiming to have a very holistic view, both in like who we work for, what we do, how we do it, and like all these levers cannot be at maximum at the same time. And I think it's very frustrating trying to find time to consider, you know, what are all the processes and how do we work with each other and who can you learn from. And then you see like how far some huge conglomerates or tech giants, like in some processes, like they are much more holistic than a small company can ever be, who has like, we're not taking huge commercial clients, etc. So we have this little budget, we have this much overhead, so we don't have all of this room to think and feel. That is actually what we said we wanted to do. And this is
I mean, I think this is a big problem in the indie game world as well, that like, and just in general in startups as well, that often these kind of like, these are these tiny companies where people run wild so they can do whatever they want. They don't have people checking, they don't have a HR department checking that everyone's being treated properly, which is not to say that tech giants are treating everyone properly either, but of course they are highly paid employees, expect a certain standard, and that's not the same in small companies. But this is really what we wanted to try and get away from. I think quite a few of us had bad experiences working in small companies, in startups. Some of us had also worked in big tech companies. So we really wanted to ask ourselves that question, like, instead of just making games about an ideal world, can we also actually have a process that is for us ideal?
Yeah.
Because I think there is a lot of game companies making kind of cherry picking political ideas without ever actually any real commitment to those ideas.
Like what kind of ideas?
I think that there, like for example, maybe representation. There are a lot of game companies who, I guess, like they might have like themes of representation of diverse people in their game, but in their actual studio, they might not have very many diverse people in their space, or they might not make that a very nice space for those people to work. So yeah, that's something that it's important to us, is to try and, I guess, like also make things according to our ideals, which is really hard, as you said.
Yeah. I wanted to respond to that also briefly, that for us that was like a big problem, that obviously we also didn't want, we have a smaller team, 5 people, and we didn't want to get caught up in insane deadline chasing and last minute rush jobs. But it's just really, really impossible, because you're so underfunded and everyone is working several jobs simultaneously. And we were working with people on different continents and time zones, which made it super, super hard. And I think that's it's really, I think it's very amazing that you attempted to not go there. And we also tried, but we totally failed.
We also
did. I saw. Sorry.
I just wanted to say, don't worry. We also didn't succeed completely. We definitely crunched too much, went over our limits sometimes, made mistakes.
Which game is the best description of your day-to-day work? I always think of like old Game & Watches where you're just trying to catch different things from falling down on different sides. But I would like to find a better metaphorical game to that I could actually strive towards, so that is slightly better than old arcade stress games.
Yeah, I
I
still
wish
feel
my
like,
life
I mean,
was more like a mini golf, like where you just do one little thing, and you move on to the next, and you take your time.
yeah, mine feels often like a level 29 Tetris.
It's great
Is
when you manage
Excel
to
a
clear
game?
the whole screen. Yeah. Let's see. We've had something from the our chatters. Let's see. Did gameplay increase or decrease during Corona? Do you have any statistics or gut feeling? Like if people
idea.
were too screen exhausted, or yeah, we don't know.
I
I
heard
don't
that
know.
Animal Crossing went wild.
Yeah.
A lot of people played it. It was like because it's like a social media meets game thing. So I think loneliness and boredom drove people to play such games a lot.
Yeah. Is there also, I don't know it so well, but like these micro transactions and things, or like things you have to check in every day, like in Animal Crossing, for example. I'm just wondering, how much they prey on like creating these addictive parts of it. I don't know. That's otherwise a question for all of you that I have is like the whole social networking industry and games, of course, are based on capturing our attention and keeping our attention and manipulating us in a way. Like, what's a way to responsibly make games and other technologies, boring or difficult enough that we put them down after a while? This I don't. Yeah, wonder.
I would say that one of the things is to like games and computers in general have this way of like they're the ultimate capitalistic medium, if you want, and they really like ape the way how society works by trying to constantly gratify people, like the carrot and the stick old thing. And one way to avoid that is, for example, to avoid like winning situations where you don't play for points or you don't play to win, but you can just, for example, that would be one possibility where you just wander around and discover a world or something like that. But the problem is, of course, that you risk doing things that are then boring and that people don't play. But that's also, in a way, maybe we should get used to more boring art and not always want it to be fast and gratification. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think fine line between respecting your audience without boring them to death. But yeah, I think for me it's really about respecting people's intelligence, and that doesn't mean making work that's inaccessible or remote, but I do think people are smart enough to handle complex ideas.
Yeah, and I think if you're developing, it already helps a lot to not demand of your audience to have like the latest VR headset or the latest GPU graphics card, whatever. That helps a lot. And also, I think that both our games are playable in any kind of time span. Like especially your game, I think you can explore it for however long you would like, and just leave when you are done exploring. And our what remains is like maybe 2 hours of gameplay, and then it's finished. You can play it again, but it will be the same game. There's no like harvesting of anything. There is no reward for the developers if you play it 10 times or one time. All these kind of mechanisms help if you abide a little bit by these ethics.
Yeah, I remember. I think back to my earliest gaming experiences with things like Police Quest or like these text input games where you, as a little kid in Sweden, took a long time to figure out that you have to first learn the word glove compartment and then look in it to be able to find the key for your car. Before that, you can't start. And so, I definitely don't have the patience for that anymore. I see another question here from the audience. To what extent do you feel that dystopianism is tied up with the classical conception of video games, usually being structured around some sort of quest or struggle? And was this something that came up when trying to structure your own game around utopias?
I mean, I would just say that obviously the classical vision of video games is very dystopian, not only because it's, or I don't know if dystopian is the right word, but it definitely has this quest structure, this hero, this old idea of like the world is in danger and there's one chosen one that is going to save it, which is obviously a problematic and authoritarian vision. And obviously the chosen ones in real life are Trump or whoever. So that's like a dystopian vision. Yeah. That's what I have to say to that. At least in our project, there's no heroes, so maybe that's what we try to.
And I find this is a very good question that comes up, like in any kind, like in games and in any kind of storytelling, and also in activism. That it's very hard to engage people without having this sense of struggle, and in politics it's hard to have it without a sense of antagonism and a sense of in-group and out-group, like the family and the hero play really important parts, I think, in any kind of story and movement, and they are like the concepts that fascists can use the best. This is very tricky. And so I don't know what, like, if like in creating games or coming up with other kinds of mechanics. I mean, the idea of a mechanic of how something can actually work, a system. I mean, games is really interesting to try to prototype that, and whether, can we go around these concepts of the struggle, the hero, the family, and the enemy, or are they somehow like built into our nervous systems of these are the things we are afraid of, and these are the things that can be manipulated. Like, do we have to play on them in a certain way? Can we do it in a kind of transparent way to teach us to kind of redefine and know, okay, yes, now I feel really motivated to do something because I heard a great speech, and this is triggering these emotions in me that I know are basically ancient and can be very like manipulated by fascists when it comes to rallying me against an enemy or for my people or whatever. Like, it can. I mean, I'm always often afraid that we can't get around these emotions, but would be good if we can feel an emotion and be driven by it, and say at the same time, yeah, okay, I know this is a kind of a stupid foundation, but it is maybe hardwired into us, and we can redirect them in a different way. Okay, that was a long tirade. I'm not sure if you can comment anything on that.
Yeah, it's hard to respond, but I'm thinking, there is really depends on what kind of game you are working on. I think if it's in my case, for instance, in Villains and Heroes, I'm trying to address an injustice. And so there are obviously people that I point to as the bad guys. And I'm putting you as a player in the role of infiltrant, like you are trying to infiltrate this network without getting caught. But you're not really a hero. You're really just accidentally stumbling into the story, and you can make up your own mind. You can either really go for the infiltration and pretend to be one of them and bullshit your way through the whole party, and but you can also choose to to take on another role, and then you can see how the game plays out, and it doesn't have a very heroic ending. It just it tries to highlight certain strategies that are used that work against democratic functioning of society, mainly corporate capture and asymmetry in power, where basically lobby groups and think tanks are taking tax-deductible donations that are directly translated into political influence, and showing them in this context. So I don't think it appeals to sort of a heroic nature in the player, more like a curiosity. So I feel it's more subtle than the the fascist rhetoric of "Wah! We must now so all rise." Yeah, maybe Chloe or
Yeah.
Gabriel have something to.
No, I just want to say something quick, but like, for example, games are not only 100% these kind of hero scenarios. There's also like building games or like whatever. I never played Animals Crossing, but what do you do there? You probably just walk around and talk with people. So there's always also like some types of games that are more based around this working together to solve something or build something, which can definitely be used in a non-fascist way or as a non-fascist model.
That is very true. Was wondering otherwise if there are, because I mean, we often invite people from very different backgrounds and also oftentimes whistleblowers in our events, and so part of it is about seeing a topic through the eyes, either of a different different perspective, and sometimes from the inside, maybe like an insider in the military system where you might not see yourself have much in common with them. And the amount of change that they're able to provoke when they reach a certain level of, like, they often believe strongly in their system, but there comes a point when they see something that they don't agree with. And here we reach this tricky point of betraying that system and needing a lot of support from the outside, where our otherwise political activism is very antagonistic, and we don't see ourselves in solidarity with people inside of oppressive systems or banks or whatever. I mean, it could also be interesting to develop games more in to describe this kind of insider's view and what happens when you try to blow the whistle, for example, because it's a lot of repression and hardship you have to go through. I mean, wondering what other kinds of stories, or if there are other perspectives that you would like to see in games that help us understand what a person has to go through in order to build solidarity for different kinds of people, so that they have an easier time either blowing the whistle or coming out, or anything that strikes you.
Well, I would love to see games like that developed, like games where you are put into these radically different perspectives, either by embodying them, because you are, as a player, put in the shoes of someone in such a position, and then confronted with the choices and hardships that this person might have to deal with. Because I think that this has a real potential to generate empathy, and I think that this type of empathy is needed for an open mind on a lot of topics. And in any case, I think that games that embody certain practices are I would love to see more of. Like, for instance, I really want to make more games like What Remains that are on either old hardware or can work on old hardware, and therefore embody an environmental message. And then the game content can be about radically different things, but at least then the medium is also a message.
And what do you guys have coming up next? Anything interesting we should follow?
We're taking a
Still
break.
yeah, we are taking a short break and
How nice. I'm going to start a PhD in September at the Center for the Study of the Networked Image, and we'll be researching, what I just mentioned, like how can the medium of games or experimental publishing, how can it embody environmental messages? So what kind of publishing would be in line with that? And this is going to be my next 3 years.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, no, then we have to get some updates. I think it's time to slowly wrap up. Let's see what we have coming up on our next Fridays. I think the next one we have will be at 9/11. Nonetheless, this is leading up to our upcoming conference, Data Cities. Let's see here. The full title of their conference is September 25 to 27, Data Cities, Smart Technologies, Tracking and Human Rights. That has been curated by our own Tatiana Bazzichelli together with Mauro Mondello. And so we'll be looking at different visions of smart cities and how which issues of tracking and surveillance they will bring with them or already has brought with them through examples, what's happening here, what's happening in the cities in the Middle East, in Asia, for example. So that's going to be pretty exciting. And we will, fingers crossed, be at Studio 1 in Bethanien in Berlin with a limited amount of seats, so with spacing and everything. So really looking forward to have a real life event again. So on the Friday, on the, September 11, we'll have a preview of that, Disruptive Friday at 5, as always. And we will have director Sonja Kennenbeck with us, who will introduce her new film, Enemies of the State, that is a documentary thriller about an American family that becomes entangled in a web of secrets and lies when the US government targets their hacker son that is called Matt DeHart. So that's going to be interesting. And the other speaker is Jer Thorpe, that is a data artist that designed an algorithm and a software tool to aid in the placements of the names on the 9/11 memorial in Manhattan that allowed the designers of the memorial to satisfy the nearly 1,500 meaningful adjacency requests made by family members of the victims. So that sounds pretty intriguing. So that's what's coming up from us. Next, check out our website for other meetups that we're planning, workshops. It's going to be a busy fall. And so thank you very much to all of you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's always like doing the end greetings is always the most difficult part. So, let's see, but it was really good to have you here, and let's see, we can take some time off to play all of these games. I really strongly suggest the links to all these games are in the description of the video and on our website, and thanks a lot, and I think we can wrap it up there and see you again next Friday. No, wait, not next Friday, but, whichever Friday it is, I'm fried. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.